Good evening, people. Plans are ruined. OBS not playing out. It weren't showing me the images through, so I've killed that and just come back to old school YouTube. So I won't be able to show you anything, but I can put the document in question on. There's a video I want to put and show you as well, which I could have shown you, but now you'll have to just listen. So it's ruined. My all day plans have ruined. Not to worry. Not to worry. It's onward and upward, as they say. Just wait for a few to come in. So, how's your week been? Yeah. Hello, Anton. Well, I've had a strange couple of weeks. I'm getting tired of all people dropping dead everywhere. It's quite sad. I'm fed up of going to funerals. I think it affected me a little bit more than I thought. So I've had to reckon with that and realise that I can't be getting emotionally involved with stories of wars anymore because it has a terrible effect and I don't like it. I'm not handling it as well as I thought, so I don't know whether anybody else out there is having the same kind of stuff. There's a lot going on. Yeah, evening, Paul. Slipknot, Paul, number 2. So yeah, it's been quite a stressful 2 weeks, and I didn't realise I was getting that way until this week actually, and then yeah, it weren't good. So I think into the future it's going to be quite difficult to deal with a lot of this stuff that's going on. It's really quite shocking. Of course, if you're into the new movie Ukraine v the World, you're probably not taking much notice, but good evening, Debbie. Oak Tree, good evening. So, what is there to be said about the Ukraine? Well, I'll tell you what was interesting. I was just looking at certain things, and I come to realise that there's a little chronology of this place, Ukraine, and that is Khazaria, Tataria, Ukraine. And of course, this Ukraine that we know today is a 1991 sort of takeover by the political movement that cannot be spoken. And so the ruling class in that area that they call the Ukraine has not been of its own people since 1991. And obviously in 2014, greater things were earmarked for it in relation to it becoming a bit of a centre for all things a little bit naughty. So, yeah, it's like no wonder they used the place as a bit of a kicking ball. And, you know, we've got to remember that. So we talk Khazaria, but that's a long time ago. That got completely enveloped by Catherine the Great in 1782, I think, or late 1700s. And it served that ever since. So looks like they've got their fangs back into the old Ukraine. And for the next stage in the Great Charade, Mr. Putin dived in there. And, you know, they're playing this divide up again now, aren't they? It's, are you in NATO or are you in Putin? It's like, how ridiculous is that, you know? It's absolutely ridiculous. So all I've done on the Twitter is just promote information that's not actually being heard or seen by the mainstream on the Twitter. And that's pretty much about it. And maybe Face8 got a bit of it as well. Hello, Keith. The truth is sovereign. Hello. Good evening to everybody. So the Ukraine, it's got a bit confusing. So I've stopped putting an input on it because it's just getting a little bit too confusing now. There's too much crap coming out. I've just watched a video earlier on Biden on about how inflation has got nothing to do with the fact that the government has borrowed gazillions and gazillions. It's nothing to do with that. It's all because of Putin. It's everything in the world is now because of the Mr. Putin, Vlad. So, and honestly, I don't know whether you've watched it, but it's doing the rounds. It goes through all his speeches in relation to him trying to say that it's all Putin's fault. I have never seen such nonsense in my life. I can't believe that this is the leader. And then Kamala Harris were asked a question. What are these people? They are just numpties. Not good. So looking at that weren't good. Boris is still beating his chest on behalf of everybody here, in his mind, of course, down at Chalker, Westminster. It's just quite ridiculous. And then, of course, you've got the sanctions that are causing havoc here and in the West, everywhere except Russia, it would appear. China's pulling out some of its manufacturing from Russia. So even though China's bigging it up as, we're all with you, lad, we're all on your side, lad. They're moving manufacturing out because, of course, they depend on the Western money far more than they do anything from Russia. So again, you can see now that how everything's actually interconnected at the top, and it does look like Russia have been shafted as planned by Raytheon some years ago in order to overstretch Russia to burst its bubble. So that has to be seen as a potential. That's not good. It's not good at all, actually, especially if they can excite all these numpties that are supposedly leaving these shores and going to join the fight in the Ukraine. So some interesting nonsense going on this week. But it is rather sad that if all the plugs are going to be pulled on Russia, that's terrible, then that's an entire nation of population going to be scorned when they'll have nothing to do with it, really. Let's be quite honest with you. Although outside of how it is here, where you've got sidey, they're going to have the same over there. But if everybody's pulling plug on Russia, one has to then go back to the prophecies of Fatima as being the main script playing out against Russia. And of course, the big new Brzezinski, who we explored, a big part of that, you look at the Fatima script, you've got the oohs and the ahs, and we can't tell you, oh, I've seen it, but I can't say, blah, blah, blah. It were seen to be a fake rate for a long time. And if anything, you look at it and it is serving one script and one script alone, and that would be the political ideology that cannot be spoken. That's the Fatima prophecies, in my opinion. It is serving that agenda. Thus, it would have to be seen as not of the heavenly entities one would consider being tied to Christianity and the church, as it were. So, lots and lots of interesting stuff there. Just a little bit more data on Akhenaten and the Aten cult, because people just assume he just took the throne, boom, off he went with this thing as though it was like brand new and his idea. It actually wasn't. It was his father's. His father had set all this up for him, or the previous pharaoh. Yeah, you never know who's who with them lot, but so it was already something that had been formulating in there way before Akhenaten, and mainly by the predecessor to him. So that's another interesting point in relation to what potentially is the entire foundation of the Israelite Judah tribal narrative. So yeah, there's also one thing that the Aten cult was exceptionally excited about, and I mean top of the pile sort of command. They were obsessed with despising anything they classed as idolatry. That being the case, we do know that the Noahide is obsessive with this idea of what is and what isn't idolatry, and the condemnation and sentence to those classed as being idolaters. So again, do we need tons and tons of evidence just to show that far from being anything that people believe to be biblical and Hebrew. This entire show is Egyptian. The whole bang, the whole kaboom is Egyptian. So therefore, then you were looking at the archangels would be representations of the Egyptian gods transferred to Greece and Olympus. You know, you've got the because when you get into Egypt, you've got the so-called races that came out of Sirius. You know, Sothis, the dog star. I think there were 4 races in their mythology, and so when you look at, you go back in you look at Enoch. Is that then perhaps a story relative to the fallen, those that left their estate? You know, could that be incorporated with the Egyptian mythology in relation to the Sothic races getting down here, building Lemuria, and then letting us get on with it, as it were, as man? So there's some interesting stuff, some interesting bits of data that are just suggesting potential other ideas that we can formulate into this mix, and as a reason why this new system that they are forcing everywhere, still in the shadows in the Western public's mind, not so in other countries. Philippines, for one, that's a major targeted area to build up these no-hide communities across the entire evangelical platform, which is natural because that's where its power base is. Of course, there's far more of those in the political movement that cannot be spoken than there are from the country that cannot be spoken, if you get my meaning. So the power of this political movement, albeit said to be belonging to one particular group, its power base comes from a secondary political group that makes up the evangelicals. So you've got Huddy in Australia, you've got Garish here. These are that political mindset. And I think looking at these immigration thing we've got with the Ukraine, you've seen a lot of black Africans claiming to have been in Ukraine and got racially abused at the borders. Now, that's just an open door for floodloads more coming in from Africa, just claiming that refugee status on for conflict that they have absolutely no connection to. So there's that as well that I've seen that's I didn't like. But we were talking about, what were we talking about? We were talking about someone. Keith, hello. Debbie, yeah, I've said that bit. So many people falling for it. Are they? Are they still like, oh, giving it the big Ukraine this, the Ukraine that? So I don't really take much notice and I don't speak about it. And I only see what people send me or what might come up on the faceache. I don't actually go out looking for this stuff now. It's just too confusing, you know. You could think you're on a good source, but you're peddling a bit of shit and it's not going to help matters, is it? So I'm not going to bother. Pink Floyd have banned the music from Russia. Well, okay, I suppose in the big scheme of things, what Putin has done is he's actually invaded another country, basically. Now, according to laws that are made up every day by the other side, who have been doing invasions, you know, like it's a religion since 9/11. But before that, we had Yugoslavia, and then previous to that, we had the first rendezvous with that bad man Saddam in Desert Storm. So yeah, I mean, it's quite ridiculous that one side can sit there and pontificate and accuse this guy of everything they've done and some, and pour scoring on it like it's from the devil's ass. It's just ridiculous. I mean, this must be why these world leaders are just so fumbling everywhere. They look so pathetic, especially at Biden. They've no moral ground. They've no perch to be perched on preaching to anybody else about invading other nations. So if people can't excuse me, recognise that. And they're backing it. They're onto a bloody loser there. But this idea of... So Grandma couldn't come anywhere near Thais, could she? No, you know, Grandma, Granddad's kids, no. All out window. But all of a sudden, anybody and everybody from Ukraine, come in, they're going to give you 350 quid a month. So let's look at this logically. Here you get all these Ukrainians in your ass, all of a sudden you're getting 350 quid a week. Before long, they took over everything because they're cooking for you, they're doing all your ass work, blah, blah. You just sat on your ass doing nothing, which might appeal to some, but of course, if you've gone for the old shots and then you drop dead, who's just took over your property and where's your kids going? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, this is another thing that people need to start considering. You need to make preparations for in case something happens to you and your offspring, you don't want them being left to the social services and ultimately trafficking networks. So, again, things that are not being thought of now by people who've danced. So many things need to be addressed, and they're quite, you know, they touch you, they crap, but at the end of the day, if you're male, you're man, female, you are going to want to know this because this is the kind of stuff you're going to have to consider and put into practice pretty quick, I would suggest. I am not happy with what I've experienced in this last 6 months as far as funerals goes, etc. It's just ridiculous. And I have to cut off that emotion from it because it has a major effect on your entire being, you know. If you're not careful, you can slam yourself down into some kind of sadness, you know, despair and all that stuff. You've got to be extra careful that you're sort of checking yourself, because I didn't recognise that were happening to me. And it wasn't until this week that it did. It really sunk in that all of us, I know I didn't feel on par. And we're all going to have to start reckoning with it too, I think. Boris doesn't speak. No, he doesn't, does he? But in his head he does. You love him. Greetings to the Jays. Pink Floyd banning the music. Well, I'm surprised at that, actually. But like I said, he has actually invaded. Nobody likes the idea of invasion. However, to jump on back of this Western garbage, you've got to be rather primary school. So it's perfect. You know, it's perfect, really. British Bulldog in schoolyard, isn't it? Come on. Post Roger Waters. Yeah, well, yeah, Waters is a bit of a different kettle of fish. But Mr. Waters did, you know, make his choice back in the day. So he can't be blamed for what happened in essence. Sorry, they can't all be blamed. Amun, Amen, Amun Ra. You see, the thing I have with issue with the Egyptian stuff is most people just know the new. It's everything, you know, Isis, Osiris, all that bunch. But they didn't enter Egypt. I can't remember when it was. Something like 4000 BC. The 5 Neuters, class looked at as potentially a shift on axis and giving it an extra 5 days. Because you can see, you go back earlier than that, and it's a different, it's like a different knowledge, if you will. And they've sort of, through these 5 Neuters, just completely enough to put themselves on top of and shifted it around, which is what they all do, innit? Every culture does that to these set original thing, and everybody has a little break off it. And here we are today. Everybody's running around on a narrative rather than going, well, that happened a long time ago. Why are we still fighting that? Why do we still care about that? Because it's not doing that that's making it happen, because they're all running on the narrative. What do I think about the view that was Tutankhamun was Alden? No, I've not seen out about that. Do you know what's interesting? You want to seek out ancient images of these superheroes rather than the ones we've had for the last maybe 1,000 years. Because I've just been looking at something else today about Alfred the Great, and there's contention that he never wrote anything down, and that were something that were imposed on him as had done. But there was another interesting point, which was so at the time of Alfred, the white like priesthood, I can't remember what they were called. Wait a minute, I might be able to just actually pick it up now. That's right, I've got it here. So they called them the white clergy. Okay, so the white clergy were the original clergy of England. Yeah, so Christianity in England post-Romans, the actual clergy that ran it were not the same as this new church that were coming in. So this is towards this is like decades before 1066 invasion. Yeah. So there was a change going on. So the white clergy, they were married. They were all married, and they run the clergy just for people to go to for. And then there's other ones coming in, and that's nicking all gold. Also, we're obsessed with gold. Everybody's jewels, all this nonsense and taxes, etc., etc. But it's interesting that there was a major battle because the old guys, the white clergy, have been kicked out of all the monasteries and Dunstan have put these flea bags in, more than likely fruit bats. But also, when I looked at a bit further, the two kings that were venerated by and still are today the Eastern Orthodox, which is Byzantium, are the two kings that sort of moved this shift off the old clergy on and putting this new one in, which I thought were exceptionally interesting because it works exactly in sync with what I've been saying, is that the church that was isn't the church that's been. But because the original some of the original liturgy was so potent and ingrained, it took them a long time, centuries even, to actually completely undermine it in the eyes of the church itself and the population. And so it's been a long, I'd say this 1,000 years has been a long time achieving. But just checking out a little bit, Justinian adding all this Sesquivi trust stuff and all this slavery via title, your registration, etc. Originally your baptism record. So it just makes perfect sense that, everything that we think we know about our history is just garbage. It's so woven into nonsense, and just to keep it off and keep them sailing at the top of the tree is amazing and fantastic. So I thought that was worth just sharing with you. So let's have a look. Where are we? So I don't know really about Tutankhamun as Alexander the Great. It doesn't make sense to me. They're not at the same time frame anyway. If Tutankhamun were after Akhenaten, then you're looking at 1300 BC. Alexander the Great. No. Came after Socrates. You know what I'm saying? It's a couple of centuries BC. So I can't go with that. I have seen old pictures of Alexander the Great, and he looks more like a Mongol. Evening, Jason. Right. Hey up, lad. Hey up there, lad. Apparently, Ukraine has no defined borders and is technically still part of Russia. No, it's just the Donbass areas that were always part of Russia. The other side isn't. This is what they keep saying to you, these military strategists in America, the generals, the former generals, are saying, you're wrong. He doesn't want the Ukraine. He wants what was part of Russia, which is why there's a problem. The population in the eastern Donbass area are Russian. Yeah. And this other thing called the Ukraine installed a political movement in 91 especially since 2014, has been attacking the Russian people in this eastern part that was Russian territory, which is why they're all Russians. That's what he wants. He wants that and to secure it, but he wants to get rid of this government because, in his eyes, and I've seen the evidence that these companies are registered in the Ukraine. It's full of laboratories. Now, I don't know what those laboratories are for, except that they are biological. Now, whether they're just testing or what, who knows? That's not been determined. So the battleground at the moment is, are they or are they not? But the fact that they're there is rather, surprising at first, I would say. Bit out of the way, aren't they? Sort of thing. So that's basically what's going on. But what they're saying to the generals in America that know they've been at it a long time is saying he wants the other part of Ukraine to be a neutral state so that neither Russia nor the West have weaponry in that landmass. So it's a buffer zone, isn't it? You've got Russian border, you've got the Ukraine, and then you've got Poland, you've got Belarus. Yeah. So if you have land masses between the Russian border and these European countries all the way up, isn't that a way to feel secure? Peace in essence, because there's any encroachments by either side into that territory, then you've got a problem. So it's not as cut and dried as people think, and it's certainly not as cut and dried as what the media are presenting. The Russians seem to be coming up. They were quiet at first; they didn't really say much, media reports and such. But now they seem to have jumped up a bit, and so it's got a bit confusing. I think they're all throwing propaganda out now. So rather than get caught up by pushing any of that, I'll just sort of sit back until I can find something that does make sense. Jaded, yeah, just talk to Kenny Norton. It's a great thing not having a television to watch. Or I've got a television, but I don't watch the television. I may put Netflix on if there's something I want to watch, and any films, films and all that kind of stuff. But no way, the telly can't come on here. It doesn't come on. There's no early in it. I'm subbed to a channel called Unknown Eagle who uses the exact same pic in their video and thumbnail. What are you talking about? What image are we talking about here? All right, Shagger. All right, pal, how's it going? Yeah, get them thumbs up, innit? Because they've been robbing me of subscribers all week. I've watched them. Ironic taking about Alfred, just watching The Last Kingdom. The Last Kingdom, oh man, it's awesome, isn't it? It's just awesome, that. Love it. Yeah. But it's a very interesting part of our history, Alfred, at that time. Because we fail to recognise that there's Rome, and there's Byzantium, Imperial Rome. And that, in my opinion, is what invaded this country in 1066. But before that, they took over the monasteries through the Carolingian bloodlines, who replaced the Merovingian bloodlines on the Holy Rome. And then the Holy Roman Empire was formed through Charlemagne. And, it's like the battles that we miss and don't see in historical context if we're over here in Blighty. Unless you're a serious pupil of history, you're not actually studying the Byzantine historical shifts of power, because it's been so powerful and it's been so enveloped in our sort of Western Rome through the control of the gold and the money and the mints, the banks, etc. So we see them as Venetians and Genoans, not quite Italians, remember. And sort of the system that were originally set up that served us well, you could say, for 2,000 years, okay, it's not serving us well at all at the moment. It's moving against us in essence, but it did have value. And I don't think what we've been fed to accept is reality. I don't think it's always been what it is today. And that again is further sort of reinforced when you consider that the Jesuits post late 1700s are nothing to do with the Vatican. They were reinstituted into the Vatican by command in 1814, working for something else, something that wanted to actually destroy it, or not destroy it, but weaken it and take it over, and then use it to bring in this. And then that is a subject matter that the reformers were onto back in the day. Unfortunately, they got touched by this Puritanism stuff, which is, forget the biblical doctrine, it's all about the narrative. I think Christianity sort of, where it differentiated itself from the Torah was the fact that it accepted it, included it, but it didn't operate under Mosaic law, as it were. It created a laws set under the Gospels, and that's what I think is different. Just to look at when you're looking into this kind of stuff. But of course, when you create a machine that has power, it becomes a playground for people who seek power, and naturally, then it's going to be going in and out of all sorts of hands, and it's not a good idea, is it? Depends on which calendar you use for Alexander. Yeah, but it's a hell of a big. Well, no, because Isaac Newton made it very plain that when you look back in history, if they've all been just adding hundreds of years, thousands of years on to big them up as older and better and bigger and worthier, chosen by the Creator. So, yeah, I can't argue. I don't know, but we are on the calendar we're on, and there we go. Same as happened at the start of the World War II. The Germans rescuing Germans in Poland. Yeah, being killed in what? Yeah, exactly. World War II. We are told that Germany invaded Poland, and then Churchill, on our behalf, said, "Yeah, right, we're all going to jump on board and kill ourselves for you." Which was the plan, but didn't happen because Hitler didn't do it. He could have annihilated our men in an afternoon at Dunkirk. Every beach were machine gunned up to death. 4 back. So the fact that they didn't die in Second World War at Dunkirk was nothing to do with Churchill. It was everything to do with Adolf Hitler. I'm not bigging up Adolf Hitler. Do not get me wrong. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just saying facts are facts. And the reason why we still had an army was because he didn't want to shoot us all. So there you go. These are other things that we need to look at. But Poland was attacking the Germans. And I picked up 2 or 3 New York Times reports to that effect. And these were reports being done as they were happening. And this is before the war kicked off. So, and I think I've got that on a page on the website, which is a very interesting study, I have to say. I think it's called 6 Million Jews, because it's analysing the figure, the misuse of it, which hasn't actually served the Jews themselves. And it takes that kind of an explorer to just suggest that is something that needs to be maybe looked at, because it's it's a touchy subject. But there were some interesting information coming to the fore when that report was being put together. So yeah, the writings of Ptolemy and eyewitness writing the funeral. I didn't know exactly what to have a quote. You better have a quote. Oh, that listen. Tell you what I know. It were a con. Okay, Carter's money were about to run out. They put that together. So when you analyse, I have it on my Facebook, the fun analyse. So when you start to analyse the decorations on these so-called artifacts, they're from different ages, different eras, just pushed together. It were a con. He blagged Carnarvon because he was funding were going to stop. And obviously he were enjoying himself out there, digging holes. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with digging holes. I used to love digging holes when I was a young kid. I used to actually try and dig our own mines, believe it or not. But Oh, no. The whole Tutankhamun, as you know it through your mum, is a complete fake-up. Complete fake-up. And I think it would ought to be a fake, but the big boys realised they could use this to further knock scent off who these so-called leaders, priesthood are. So it was a fraud between Carter and to defraud Carnarvon for another year's fund, but the big boys picked it up and used it, and that's why it was blazoned across everywhere. But it is on my Facebook. It might be a couple of years ago, so you'd have to take 25 years to go down it if they haven't took it off. But you'd have to see the information yourself to make your own mind up. But basically, the data that Cat's hit is that it's all amalgamated, different artifacts are from way different ages, so it is worth looking at. And I can't remember the ins and outs of it, but it was quite interesting. So a post showing all the pharmaceutical companies situated in Kiev was shot. Well, I put, I think, 25 into 4 images so you can see them. Just so that people could say, well, hang on a minute, what the bloody hell's going on here? You know, it's like, what, they've been funding labs in China, and look what happened, and they're funding all these labs in the Ukraine. I mean, that's quite a pivotal point, isn't it, if you wanted to start throwing biological bloody attacks on people and then start blaming everybody else. No, I'm not sure. Ptolemy. I've had no TV in 2015. You see those who watch TV. Yeah, they are. You really. And even people that are pretty savvy as well, I know. They still like the soaps and they get carried away with themselves. You know, if I'm in the company at the home and they're on, you can see them they're well in it. They're in it. They are in that. That's part of their little life. And they get well excited. And it's quite comical. It really is. I know exactly what you mean. They are living in, well, they're living in the world. That's the thing. You know, I've been for a good walk up Coppers today. Windy as hell. Whoa, blood cobblers out my lugs and all sorts. It were a good do. But the earth is exactly as it's always been. As birds are tweeting, dogs are shitting everywhere, the numpties are picking it up with a bag when you're in the middle of a fucking wilderness. They're still picking it up in a bag and then throwing it in trees. It looks like Christmas all year round in forest, but the black baubles, unfortunately. But yeah, the earth is just on its own thing. It's the world that captures you in this fear, this dance, this belief, this narrative follow, this copy. And you make yourself redundant as a creative force. So those that use your creative force to their agendas have given you the world to trap you in. All of us, I mean, because we are all in it. I mean, sometimes I talk probably like I'm ponting. No, let's get it right. I'm a fair way out of it in my mind, for goodness sake, but no, it's still there. It still causes me problems. You know, it's one of them. We just have to be real about it, and it's interesting exploring how we actually got here. You know, innit? Let's be fair, especially when it doesn't go with the narrative. I'm thinking that Game of Thrones was more documentary than fiction. Well, there was so much symbolism in there and historical. Not necessarily, so you wouldn't get the full names and titles. They were just odd names and such that, you know, when they came out as, you think, yeah. So you could actually get into it and start breaking it down quite as an historical text, and a bit like Lord of the Rings, you know, whereas Lord of the Rings is more showing you the different beings in the different worlds. Game of Thrones is just, it's kings and queens in it on the ground. Let's kick each other's heads in. Evening campus, Chris I. Search biotech and pharmaceutical companies. And psychopaths running the asylum. Well, of course. Who else would be attracted to doing such nonsense? I gave up so. Ilder Ogden last time I used to watch it. And Brookside, that used to make me laugh. I didn't have a choice because I was married. You know what it's like when you're married? The female's got the telly on 24/7, so you can't not listen to it unless you put your headphones on. But yeah, they were funny. The soap opera, television was actually quite funny. There's a lot of light-hearted stuff in it. And journalists reported news that government didn't want out. News that corporations didn't want out. It came out because we had journalists who were hunting it down. That was the job. Now you hunt it down and present it, people laugh at you because you're in the world, and the reality is just not what the world is based on. The world is based on assumption, presumption, and fantasy. That's born off those assumptions and presumptions. So the next fear-mongering propaganda will be Russia takes over the US by allies in Ukraine. Well, they're already on that script, aren't they? I mean, let's look. The only time chemical weapons have ever been thrown on the table is always some twisted bunch that, when you look into it, has been trained by CIA and probably funded by all Western taxpayers by default. But then, they're on a war at moments, aren't they? Sort of. I know it's not gone up yet with NATO, but I mean, if Putin's going to start bombing these armament convoys as they're coming into Russia, that's going to piss people off, isn't it? I mean, let me be frank. This is how I see it. So everybody sees these two sides. You're walking in the middle. What you're seeing is events being created, the media blowing it up out of all proportion, creating a whirlwind of fear, and you must pay attention. And you've got these dark figures maneuvering things to an agenda that they want, and they alone want it, nobody else. And their agenda in all this hoo-ha is war. They want to kick off this Islamist versus the political movement that cannot be spoken against each other, because now that war is going to be carried out on your land, in your town, in your city. You see what I'm saying? This war that they set up, the Third World War, as telegraphed to us by Albert Pike after the Civil War in America, is exactly that. But the war's to be fought on our turf, everybody else's turf. Don't you see that that's what the entire immigration agenda has been since 1922? It's to put the Islamist and the political one that can't be spoken in your backyard, because they are never going to come together in a peace. So these hidden hand in all this furore that's going on, they have that agenda only, and that is to pump out whatever shit they feel necessary will excite people to go to war. And that's what's happening. Be in the world, not of it. Yeah, because the world exists in the same space as the earth, doesn't it? We're all trapped in the matrix to a great lesson. We are. Of course we are. But you have to be. That's the game, isn't it? It's like, that is what it is. You're born, you're going to go through whatever experiences you're going to go through, and then you're grown up. You become man, not boy. And that's male or female. So you're not boy, you're not girl, you're man. And what are you going to do with it? Most people are just so off in this, following this gravy train for jingle jangles. They don't get to guts of what you're really supposed to be doing here, and that's getting a grip of yourself, which means taking responsibility for your own shit, no matter how shit and painful it is. Have you sulk, have you mourned for a bit, but climb out of it knowing full well that you played the role in that, as to why it came before you. And yeah, it doesn't mean you don't have enemies that are throwing shit at you. I mean, I have some of them, but they're just so pathetic. They're so full of hate, jealousy. It's quite ridiculous to watch them, because they're just destroying themselves, and I'm happy to watch them do that. So, you know, there are them, you know, there's that stuff that comes at you as well. It's just usually jealousy, pure jealousy. So you do have to deal with that kind of stuff. But in general terms, the bigots in your life, you know, they're there for a reason. Most of the time, it's to keep you out of your sleep in relation to a particular continuing experience you keep having, in order to help you flip out of it, you know. And sometimes they can be quite severe. Hugo talks, he's right on that score. New Precious is a smartphone rather than a ring. It's what it used to be. Yeah, and then once you recognise that you're trapped, the game is then undoing those traps, because a lot of the time we don't recognise we're trapped because it's the subconscious that's automated to it. So first you have to bring it into your conscious state, then you have to find and work out how that pans out as a subconscious response, you know. Then you can start to look at that and reprogram that subconscious response. That's when you can start clearing the shit off you, as it were, because it's the only thing worth doing. I don't care how old you are. You know, people ask too late. It's never too late, believe me. You know, I mean, if I've got a man now, 22, I mean, if I could go back to being 20 knowing what I know, you know what I'm saying? But that's not going to happen, is it? Am I free tomorrow evening at 6? Probably not. I'm afraid. Hornsey Wood, I like him. He's good. He's really, really good. And I have watched a video on his. You know, that guy knows far more than me on that kind of stuff. Way. I'd be just a pupil. If I come onto that Zoom, I'd be a pupil. Maybe we can redirect that to another time, because I would like to get on. But the guy, he'd be teaching me. You know, I've listened to some of his stuff. Because I'm only good at what I know. You know, I'm not a fucking font of wisdom when it comes to the law. But in understanding the simplicity of law and complexity of the legal, I'm more happy to fuck the complexity and just get it simple. So, you know, people like Hornsey, they're expert in their field without a shadow of a doubt. And he presents it well as well. Very well. He's a good teacher, I'll say. 1.77 litre, is it? Well, I've been paying 169 for my diesel for yonks, so it's not really affecting me yet. Plus, I always keep my tank full. And if you're on petrol, you should always keep your tank full, because you lose so much in the fumes as it gets to half and beyond. But with diesel, even, it's just, if you're keeping it up top end, if there's any little problems like they were that when they were emptying tanks, it didn't affect me at all. Everybody's having a fit and parking up for like 25 days. Yeah, never bothered me. I mean, I weren't really doing much travelling at the time either, so that helped. But all music, easier said than done. We can't. All music, easier said than done. We can't always be conscious of everything what program is. Well, that's a bit of a defeatist, Deborah. Bit defeatist there, Deborah. Come on. I don't have none of that nonsense on here. It's all groovy and going up. Russia is in the Illuminati card game. There isn't a country on the planet that isn't connected at government level and elite level to the Committee 300. It's all about destroying people. And this is what people are not getting. And what I said earlier is that Putin's done this, but all the Russian people now are being scorned. What have they done? What have they done? Yeah? The only people that ever benefit from these are the people that set it up. Old people. And you young people go and fight it. You know, I was the same when I was a youngster. I was caught up in all that nonsense. You know, it took me, what were I? 26, I think, when it started, just started doing what they call a reverse on my chart. It just changed things, you know, in everything. Plus, I was on my way to being married. You know what I mean? So it was a complete change for me then. But I was thick. Oh, I mean, probably weren't thick, but I was bedded in solid to the Matrix without a doubt. And so that's when I started undoing. So it's been a long shot, because you'll go as quick as you allow yourself to, you know. And that's a fact. We're so lazy, so disorganized, no discipline. That's one good thing about the military. It's the discipline. You know, your whole body's working. It's in tune with your mind. Everything's clicking. You feel good. You know, when you're fit like that, you feel good because everything is operational. And when, you know, just in normal living, unless you're up and down doing your running around and cycling, which I like doing cycling. I'm going to have to get mine back going on this year because I think I need to. But yeah, keep yourself fit and healthy. Stop eating the shit. And my word, what a difference. Thinking isn't that difficult, you know. I think it's quite easy. But what I'm lacking is discipline. I'm terrible. I've got my life set as it is, and I think that's discipline. But you know, I had discipline back when I was doing it before. Flaming, you know, up at 6, 2 hours off to work, back 6, bath, tea, back on it till 1 o'clock. That was discipline. That. I mean, I don't seem to be able to do that anymore. It's either one or t'other. We'll have to be like Neo. You can't fly. Don't be jumping off buildings or like that. And don't be thinking you can stop bullets neither. That's a fib. You go maybe smartphones and technology shopping as well. What did I say about these? I can't remember. If you could go back to 20, you'd have more perky tits. Standard, isn't it, at 20? I got 5 jerry cans. I'm not defeated at all. I was answering the comment. No, I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying, just check yourself, lady, in case you're all right, fibbing to yourself, because we do that well. There'll be many people on the call asking Owen's questions. We're also helping him perfect the process. I'd love you to come. Don't think I'll make it tomorrow. I've got quite a busy day on tomorrow. So, but maybe another time. I mean, to be honest, I've been asked for a lot of things lately. I'm just not doing it at the minute. I know why now. The last couple of weeks has been a bit weird, but I really recognise that this week, and I've confronted it over this weekend, and I'm perking myself back up again. But just be ready for that kind of stuff, guys, because it's not good. It's not nice. It's Indy, by the way. Hello, Indy. How are you doing? You all right? So that's you with Zoomer. All right, Joe. No, at minute, I'm not up to it, to be honest. I've even got exceptionally lazy with these live streams. You know, I've not been prepping them. I prepped it this afternoon. That's really naughty. But it's just the way I've been feeling at minute. I'm just a bit odd. But I am coming to. Oh, you'll love him, Slipknot. He's brilliant. He's good. You'll like him. Just, if Debbie puts something up, there you go. She's put you a YouTube job up. It's good, and you will learn stuff because it's law. Now, right, so we've chatted. Now let me. Black lesbian poet. Who are you? Black lesbian poet. Have we got some intel scamps on here? Hey, listen, Fleabags. I'm going to be paying attention to this chat tonight because I've noticed there's some guys that think they're clever mind players on here. Well, I'm sorry. It's not working. So, black lesbian poet. Who the fuck are you then? And why have you wasted your entire life muff munching when there's mail to be had? The end of all your dreams. No, girl, my dreams are big. And they change a lot. Well, thank you, Andrea. You're trying to prepare for funerals. Oh, just be careful, because you can't not get empathetically involved. And I were empathetically involved, and I was telling everybody for 2 years, don't touch this shot. You know, I told everybody that were all I got from me, do not go near it. That was my empathy. I can't give it again. If I give it again, I'll drain myself, and I won't be any good to nobody. Have a limited company. Well, there's a lot of people jumping on that. As you see fit, chaps. Okay, well, all right, Chuck. All right, Chuck. Joining the dots. Greetings. Hello, Scorched Earth. Wednesday Wood is a blatant show. Oh, why do you say that? I've listened to a couple of his things, and I didn't see a shiller. Right, anyway, shut up now. Let's get on with the crack. The gig has been interfered with by you gang. Now, I can't show you this now because I said my OBS weren't playing out, and it was like 5-2, and I thought, well, I can't start fanning around, just bog it off and get onto YouTube. So we're back on YouTube for today. So you can't see it, but I want you to listen to this. Right? It's important. If I can find it. What have I done with it? Right. Are you ready? Okay. This is from 1957 Christmas speech.
In the old days, the monarch and his leadership.
Let me just start that again because I cocked up again.
In the old days, the monarch led his soldiers on the battlefield, and his leadership at all times was close and personal. Today, things are very different. I cannot lead you into battle. I do not give you laws or administer justice. But I can do something else. I can give you my heart. I do not give you laws or administer justice. I can give you my heart. I do not give you laws or administer justice. I can give you my heart. I can give you my heart. I can give you my heart.
Okay. Did you hear that? Did you hear it? Well, anyway, can I just ask you, somebody answer me a question. Did you actually hear that speech? Who's having sex on chat? Oh. Go on there. Stop being naughty. Muff Munch is naughty. Raised to the rescue. So you heard it, right? So what she basically said were, she's not going to give you law, and she's not giving you justice. Right? This is in 1957. They told the then baby boomers the crack, but they were too busy snapping LSD, and wife swapping. Right? So they told us. Now let's have a look at blacks. So this is blacks, obviously commentaries on common law. So this guy blacks like the other guys. I forgot Cork and the other one. Basically, America created its common law off William Blackstone's commentaries on English common law. Okay, so he went into all the courtrooms and he took notes of how England dealt with law. So I think I have read this to you before, but it's worth reading again. I'll not read it all, but I'll just say a court of record is that where the acts and judicial proceedings are enrolled in parchment for a perpetual memorial and testimony, which rolls are called the records of the court, and are of such high and supereminent authority that their truth is not to be called in question. For it is a settled rule and maxim that nothing shall be averred against a record, nor shall any plea or even proof be admitted to the contrary. And if the existence of a record be denied, it shall be tried by nothing but itself. That is, upon bare inspection, whether there be any such record or no, else there will be no end of disputes. But if there appear any mistake of the clerk in making up such record, the court will direct him to amend it. Now, this is the important bit. All courts of record are the king's court. See, kings in right of his crown and royal dignity, and therefore no other court hath authority to fine or imprison. So that's the king's court. This is English law. Only the king's court. So that's your chancery. Yeah, upholds the rights of the beneficiary. Okay, it's your Supreme Court, which is the Queen's Bench or King's Bench. Yeah, because the Queen has just told us, has she not, that she doesn't give us law or justice, and all these courts are Her Majesty's. And they get away with it because I believe if you see HM, you have to assume his, unless it states her. So there's a difference again. So this again is why we're not getting law, and this monarch hasn't upheld it. How has she got past the coronation oath on that? You know what I'm saying? How's the managed that? So I thought that were rather worrying. Yeah? What's Charlie Boy going to say? I uphold sex with donkeys, pigs, and all animals because he loves everybody. So he says. Who knows these things? See, the coronation oath isn't going to be the same because Charles is obvious. He says all the time he wants to uphold all faiths. Oh. That's not England. That isn't what England is. It upholds the Church of England and nothing else. So Vatican II can get thrown out. That's bollocks. All these evangelicals, what the hell are they, for God's sake? Apart from blazing examples of the political movement that can't be spoken. I do not give you laws or administer justice. What, do you think your private member? Yeah. What about that? There it is for you. But it's the king's courts, the courts of record. None other can issue fine or imprisonment. Which is why they've had to shift you onto person. So that these courts can. Well, if we look at the heart, it's been black. Has it not? Look at what's happened. Look at what's actually happened. Not good. She's undone everything Queen Elizabeth I achieved. Greg were right on that. I have a funny feeling. Quite a lot of what Greg has come out with in his day might start to show itself. It's just a hunch. So what we're going to do then is that Pilgrims. Do you want to do Pilgrims? They're worth a check out. They're a potent mix. Also, something else that has come to attention that we need to start. I haven't had to look at it yet. It's the Economic Crime and Transparency and Enforcement Bill. Now, this is a bit worrying because this is the new rulings for this electronic currency, and they're giving themselves every power in the world. Every power in the world they're giving themselves over this electronic currency. Ooh, people! I haven't read it yet. I've just read the introductions and the titles of the content, and you can see, without even looking into details, that they have pretty much monopolized all the regulations on everything that's going to be inside this electronic currency. It's worrying a lot in relation to money coming from outside and inside others and what's out. It's not good. The power these bastards are giving themselves is pretty much absolute. So I'm going to have to look at this, and it's definitely going to have to be looked at and presented, some of the findings on the live stream for sure. So the Pilgrims, where are we? In the coroner oath, she said she would act with insincerity, not insincerity. Did she? Check that. Is it? Can you hear that? Because there is a video of the coronation. Well, that's what's happened anyway. So I can't deny that, because that is what's happened. So if it is 57, I'm not sure what time. When did she get wed? Because if she said that before, well, no, she said that in her oath. It's even before she could have been extorted, as has been suggested. So that'll be interesting. I might have to check that out as well. I'll have to look at 57 in relation to Philip, Mountbatten, etc., because, but then, well, yeah, we know what they are. We know what they are. But the problem we've got is the majority of the masses do not. They do not. Because all this happened in baby boomer watch. You know? The ones that know nothing but deceit and lies. Because that's all they've ever embellished. Whether that be family secrets or secret society secrets, you know, what's the masonry called? It's speculative masonry, because that's all your pyramid schemes. I mean, a lot of them got wealthy in that through 90s. A hell of a lot, and 80s actually. You know, they're keeping all this. It's all they know, and I don't think they've recognised that their lives are built on deceit. Yeah, well, we know it's going to be altered. We know it is. It's not a letter for an Englishman. They call themselves a British monarch, don't they now? That's, what the fuck's that? That's an empire. That's Byzantium. You know? They have to. They have to tell you. Like before Christmas, when I'd sort of invaded Australia and mashed up the little that political movement that can't be spoken shindig with Uddy and that military guy and that copper woman, Crystal. That got their attention, and they sent me a ping on my website, Oracle. Yeah. So they tell you, and they've been all over me since then. And then I did it with Sexton. Again, boom, they were on. Because I would blow in the little games, and that's when you get their attention. And they've been all over me since then. But they're starting to calm down again now, because it costs some money. I'm not really doing anything now. I'm being good. I'm being a good boy. You know what I'm saying? I'm being a bit of a good boy at the moment. So they don't seem to be as excitable. Yeah, I've done some family tree. Yeah, get them 8 thumbs up jobs. So shall we have a look at the Pilgrims? We might not finish it all tonight, but it doesn't matter. So I'll take that as a yeah. Well, first of all, I'll put this link for you so you can actually have it up in your browser if you like. You don't have to stir it around much. Who thinks the Jesuit order is the tip of the spear? No, they're just a branch of the Prussian military, which incorporates the Templars. Yeah, they subdued the Knights of Malta under command of Napoleon. The Prussians is who they are, which is the military might of the Byzantine Empire, Rome, not Rome, the Vatican. But Rome, the Vatican, is now operating the antagonist agenda because it's been taken over completely. That's what's happened. Right. Have I sent it? You've got it, Pilgrims. Amazing. Yeah, it does actually send first. I've noticed that myself, actually. Right, off we go, because I can't see your musings now. Right, the Pilgrim Society. This is obviously, it's on Wayback Machine, so it's not around now. Says there are several curious things about these pilgrims' functions. In the first place, there is present at these dinners an array of notables such as it would be difficult to bring together under one roof for any other purpose and by any other society. Among the guests were John D. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Thomas W. Lamont, and other members of the House of Morgan. We are entitled to know what the Pilgrim Society is, what it stands for, and who these powerful pilgrims are that can call out the great to hear a British ambassador expound to Americans the virtues of a united democratic front. And that was written by John T. Whiteford, asking very reasonable questions in his 1940 pamphlet, Sir Uncle Sam, Knight of the British Empire. Oh, that's interesting. The aim of the international bankers was nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. The system was to be controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world, acting in concert, by secret arrangements arrived at in frequent private meetings and conferences, and that was Carroll Quigley, Tragedy and All. Can the Pilgrims, which Quigley never mentioned, verify his story of an Anglo-American establishment? Right. He didn't actually mention him, thinking about it. I like Carroll Quigley. He gave us some information, a lot. Then you've got the content. So intro, it says most people have at least vaguely heard of the Eastern establishment. This is a reference to a group of people in the northeast of the United States, to which many appear to wield a disproportionate amount of influence over the nation's politics. This influence, which goes back even further than the days of John D. Rockefeller Sr. and J.P. Morgan Sr., has been illustrated by the fact that a great number of the individuals working in the senior positions of government have come from a number of New York-based banks, insurance companies, and law firms, only to return to this group of banks and businesses after their public term came to an end. Often these individuals served in more than one administration and together with a number of other peculiarities, think of controversial policies, suspected cover-ups, ignored conflicts of interest, lack of media attention, etc. Some people have become suspicious of what at times appear to be almost like a permanent government. A 1962 newspaper column voiced these suspicions best. There is an establishment in the United States. The word establishment is a general term for the power elite and international finance, business, and professions, largely from the Northeast, who wield most of the power regardless of who is in the White House. Most people are unaware of the existence of this legitimate mafia, yet the power of the establishment makes itself felt from the professor who seeks a foundation grant to the candidate for a cabinet post or State Department job. It affects the nation's policies in almost every area. For example, the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City, subsidized by Rockefeller interests since 1927, boasts a membership of at least 90% establishment figures. The WASP elite. The origins of the Eastern establishment is hardly part of accepted official history. Authors writing about this topic have regularly been criticised, sometimes for seeing things that aren't there, sometimes for leaving out important aspects and missing the big picture. Some of the reasons that these discussions exist are quite obvious, though. 1. There are large political and business interests involved here, which, like the way their system of private behind-the-scenes conferences has evolved. 2, there is a small group of insiders, a huge group of outsiders, and because of their different lives, they often are unable to understand or refuse to understand the other side. That's schismogenesis, isn't it? What sets an elite apart from the regular population is influence in domestic politics and economy, and influence in foreign politics and the world economy. This influence in many cases is hereditary, because within establishment circles, it is as much about who you know as it is about what you know. In the modern age, education is crucial, and in the case of the Eastern establishment of the United States, most members send their children to Yale, Harvard, or Princeton to get a law degree or MBA. Members of the British establishment usually go to Oxford, with Cambridge coming in second. As soon as these young students graduate, they are free to join the family bank or some other establishment business. Outsiders can join the club by going to the right schools and befriending other members of the establishment, or by joining secret societies. It doesn't say that, but I've added that. It says the Eastern establishment is so-called WASP establishment, meaning white, Anglo-Saxon and Protestant. The term specifically refers to Americans of British descent, even though there is a similar WASP establishment in Great Britain surrounding the royal family, which is closely associated with its American counterpart. The term WASP was applied to America's elite is somewhat inadequate. Usually, its Anglo-Saxon descent and Protestant values are emphasized, followed by a general description of the historic influence of this group. Whenever the question comes up if this establishment still has great influence today, few, if any, scholars come up with a clear and definitive answer. Much further than throwing around terms like Ivy League and All Boys Network, they usually won't go. Well, I'll just add that, this is all post-Civil War, because the WASP, you could say, establishment was when the South was wealthy with cotton, which also made the north of England powerful on its own right outside of London. Yeah, so you got the north being separate and its own power because of the South in America, Virginia, yeah, all them places, because they were probably Matlaxes that were running job. So they had to destroy that. And the Civil War was all about that. Destroy the power of the South, also destroying the power of the north of England. In my studies, it looks to me like the WASP establishment were the great ones that built America. And then when the Jesuits and the Prussians and all these other operations got this pause in, and so to then use the Catholics in America as the power great base, then from that time, it wasn't really the WASPs in control. They were just as a sort of puppet, a puppet thing. So the product, the WASPs actually built America when it were great, and then it was destroyed ultimately by Rome. So what America managed to keep off as a republic, as one of the founding fathers said, that we've given you a republic if you can keep it. It ended then. And this, for me, when we're looking at this, you're looking at German royals on here. I'm not having it so much that this is the original groups. I mean, most of the original groups that were the WASP wanted to get the hell out of Europe and England, especially, and Scotland. But the Scottish Rite, that has been the problem in Freemasonry, because that has been basically where the Prussians have managed to get in and turned the Scottish Rite into something that it really should never ever even contemplated becoming. Which is why you get so many. Which is why a lot of the Americans, love the Scottish. But it's got nothing to do with Scottish people. This is to do with the bloodlines that came over under David I from Belgium area. Tons of them. Most of these names you see as Scottish aren't. Previous to that, you had the Islanders, the clans. That's what it were, but not after David I. So when they're harking back to Scotland, it's the theft of Scotland by these bloodlines. Blah blah. So the term WASP when applied to America's elite is somewhat done that. Now, anno 2008, let's change this and write down. So this is 2008. A detailed list of characteristics which fully describes the traditional Eastern establishment was all WASP elite. It is a social elite centered around a number of universities, a group of banks, insurance companies, and law firms, and a group of influential, privately funded foundations and think tanks. It is centered in and around New York, even though at any moment a large portion of this group is active within the government and non-government institutions in Washington. You see, when you've got your foundations and think tanks, these are more your Roman connected. So to me, what they're describing here in this Pilgrim Society is not the original American WASP elite. Me, personally, they were the good guys. This is describing to me the influx of Prussian control through whatever secret society and group it had power with, which is pretty much all of them, especially today. To me, that's what this is describing. And the reason that, they're pushing this out is to just make the Protestants look even worse, when, the Protestants weren't a bad people that I've met and I know and I've grown up with. It's just in the same as the Catholics aren't either. They're just very cliquey, the Catholics, but they've been under a lot of pressure for the last few hundred years, haven't they? You know what I'm saying? So, but for me, it's just, if people started to recognise this, that a lot of this history we look at, we're looking at all this bad, it's a sign to what was and that's been taken over, but yet to your mind, you're seeing your own culture in a lot of cases as, oh my God, what have we done? Well, you're always going to get numpties who are going to join the empire and the imperial stuff because they're looking for gravy. They're looking for the jingle jangle, They're a 10 a penny. But your real gutsy people that built America, you know what I mean? Whether they were Masons or not, it doesn't matter. Was Freemasonry this it is today then? It were getting there, but, it's the Scottish Rite that's achieved that for this Prussian group in the Western elite societies. There is a close relationship with the British aristocracy and the British royal family via diplomatic officials, individual contracts, and private clubs. The dominant religion is Protestant, in particular the Episcopal, Anglican, and Presbyterian churches. British branches of Freemasonry and Templar orders are popular. This is a group behind the globalisation process, and members are generally great supporters of the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Movement. So, everything that we know that the empire services, not what created England, not what created America, do you know what I mean? Not what created France, not what created Norway, Sweden, Holland, Germany even, and Russia. Because them are nations that people built, and then you've got this group on top hovering about, just shafting everybody, and they've created this false world for everybody to suck into, because it's pets mean prizes, isn't it? You get somewhere out of it. But it's, is it everything? Makes life easier, definitely, and you can do a bit, but getting to terms with your own self, I think, is the best thing you can do. Catholic and especially Zionist interests are not very much appreciated. Okay. Well, the Jesuits don't represent Catholicism, and even evangelicals couldn't see the light with Catholicism until it became Vatican II. So we're talking in past tense of Vatican II again. You wouldn't have anything to do with Catholic in it, not if you're no loving money. And the Protestant wouldn't accept the Schofield Bible either. It took a lot of effort for them to achieve that, because they weren't achieving it in England, because the clergy said, don't be stupid. What shit are you talking? All this nonsense you're basing it on is his own footnotes. It's his own notes. You're basing scripture on his notes, which were not doctrine. They weren't biblical. So the clergy weren't having it. They had to wait a generation to kill them off. But in the 20s, they did get the aristocracy at it, the Roaring Twenties. Got them on the court, on the, their ecstasy and all these drugs that they had out then, because they've been out a lot longer than people think. But what they actually did through what they called the Cecil Hotel, which I have a report on the website about, a majorly used building, a palace. And they built it and then did what they did and then knocked it down and built something else. And it's like, what? But what they actually did was they'd pulled together the blues and swing and created jazz, which is dissonance. It's dissonant music. And that sort of was the backdrop to the Roaring Twenties. So that upped him in, because he created jazz out of that mix. So, and the Cecil Hotel, it was sort of a secret society hub where all the Protestant students in America were all, it must have been part of a circuit, you know what I mean, for these people to go to, and all they were doing in there was shoving the Schofield Bible into the minds of all the American college students and, elitist children, etc., etc. And it actually took off in America. And then you got all these evangelical movements. Here, it took a lot more. The clergy weren't having it. They had to wait till they knocked them off, because you're having First World War, then Second World War. It's not hard. And then as they filtered down music into lower society through the 50s and 60s, your rock and roll in the 50s, and then your LSD script and Muse through the 60s. It just upped it. They pulled what they'd done to the aristocracy in the 20s down into the general society things, and that's the baby boomer generation, where they've used all these deceptions. So they've done it in this time period because none of the baby boomers were taking a blind bit of notice. So it all makes perfect sense when you're breaking it down and you include all the other social structures they've got to control and stuff like that. It's not that, there's no mystery to it. What are you lot on about? What is she? What are you on about now, Muff Mudge? I live not far from where the Knights Templar settled, and they built Rosslyn Chapel. Then she called the Scottish Rites responsible, and Scotland is screwed. I once went to a conference, and one of the St. Clairs were there. I think he was the head of it at the time. But I'll tell you what, I weren't having it. I weren't having it. He was saying that they were thrown out of the game when they backed the Burgundians. But the St. Clairs are still right up there at the top of the game, I'm telling you now, so I'm not having that. They're probably more powerful in America. A bit like the Grosvenors, the Duke of Westminster's. Because that's the Mellons over there, these massive bloodline families in America, and they own, they're wealthy here in England, but when you transfer that power over into a place like America, the wealth is just beyond belief. I know, yeah, darling, and I'm just being facetious. I'm not being in any way insultive. I'm just having So I'm welcoming you, basically. As long as you behave yourself, you're more than welcome. He's a BBC. Ike is a BBC. He was. Would you say he was a gatekeeper? I'd say he's just more of a semi-down fantasy. He's more of the fantasy. He's the Pied Piper of, let's come down this fantasy trip. I'll give you everything you need that will mean you can't do sweet fuck all to stop anything or sort your own life out. A bit like a lot of gurus you've had in India, all these people that have gone out to India, and it turns out that they're paedophiles and rapists, these gurus. But it's all right, they're allowed to do it because they're God. So yeah, I mean, just fantasy. People like fantasy because it's an escape, innit, from reality, let's be fair. And the 60s launched nothing but fantasy on the public. Atiyan Child's 5-hour video. No, I haven't. I've never even heard that name, actually. You can put a link up on here if you don't mind, Keith. Claire Randall, hello. From Cornwall. Cornwall, what a place. We love Cornwall. I do, anyway. I'm within walking distance of Roslyn Chapel. Oh, hi, Joe. Yeah. I've been up to Edinburgh, and what's it called just below it? I forgot what it's called. Go to a few conferences up there. Lovely. It's a lovely place, but I'll tell you what, I couldn't get over the way that the police were treating people on the street. They were ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. People going about their business, and there were coppers everywhere. Hassling. And that's going back some. Scottish Arts. Drew Hines. So are you saying that the Sinclairs no longer are responsible for it, or has it been leased? Have they leased it? I don't think they'd sell it. I'd be very surprised if they sold it. I don't think they could. They didn't trust. Probably. Worth of 5 hours, you couldn't stop watching, and that's about the Freemasons. Well, I mean, I did a lot on the Freemasons back in the day. I was reading the books, so I had the books that were given me, etc. Well, it's not a case of giving you; they lead you to them. They do actually give you. You have a choice actually, because they're always watching to where you're going, because they want to see what paths you're flicking on. But yeah, I mean, I was just studying everything and anything. I weren't necessarily getting trapped by the path. And that's how they didn't suss. I weren't seeing it right, how they wanted it. As far as I know, it's part of the Sinclair Trust, so maybe somebody's just looking after it for them. Horton Trust was built by the Illuminati monks, yeah. A lot of our heritage were. And going back to what I said at the beginning, so you had the old guard of Christian clergy called the white clergy, and they were all married. So all this nonsense that came after, there were none of that. It would, they were just there, and then in came Byzantium and robbing everything and nicking everything and all rules and regulations. Right, I suppose I better get back to the old Pilgrims. We're at 133. Oh, we're not too bad. At the turn of the 20th century, a number of influential persons were interested in bringing the establishments of the United States and Great Britain closer together. The St. George's Society in New York, the American Society in London, and the growing network of Anglo-American League branches in England, founded by a good number of later Pilgrim Society members, were seen as inadequate, so the idea arose to form a new elitist society with branches in both London and New York. This became the Pilgrim Society, which organised regular meetings in such prestigious hotels as the Victoria, the Waldorf Astoria, the Carlton Ritz, and the Savoy. The idea of setting up what ultimately became the Pilgrim Society was first discussed by a member of Americans working in London. One of them was Lindsay Russell, a well-connected lawyer from New York who regularly visited London in these days to set up his law firm, Alexander and Colby. It was Russell who got together with General Joseph Wheeler on a visit to London, General Lloyd Roberts and Sir Harry Brittain. Together they organised the original meeting of the Pilgrims of Great Britain at the Carlton Hotel on July the 11th, 1902. The meeting was a success. So, yeah, I think when you've looked into it, it's tied into the Round Table group as well. That's, yeah, it's a long time since I've looked at this. The meeting was a success, and 2 weeks later, Lord Roberts was elected president of the Pilgrims. Lord Grenfell and Admiral Hedworth Lambton became presidents. Two other vice presidents were American Senator Chauncey M. Depew and he was Yale and Skull and Bones, which of course was set up by the Russells. Charles Taze Russell setting up the Jehovah's Witnesses. So his grandfather set up Skull and Bones at Yale, and it's a German lodge. So it's the Order of Death. So you can see these families coming in over top of what was. And we don't get to see that because that's not what they want to promote. He was a lawyer to Cornelius Vanderbilt, member of J.P. Morgan's elite Corsair Club, together with William Rockefeller, and General Joseph Wheeler. So Harry Brittain became secretary, and the Archdeacon of London, William MacDonald Sinclair, Sinclair, was elected chairman of the executive committee. So yeah, the Sinclairs are just massive. I know they're pretending that they're not, but they are absolutely huge in this game. Make no mistake about it. Where am I? At the July 11 meeting, the attendants also discussed their plans of setting up a branch in New York. Lindsay Russell and Chauncey Depew went back to the United States and approached such men as Bishop of New York, Henry Codman Potter, J.P. Morgan Sr., and former US President Grover Cleveland, who was a good friend to the Morgan family and employed by them since at least the 1880s. Under the leadership of Bishop Potter, the Pilgrims of the United States organized their first formal dinner on February 4th, 1903. The two societies have been organizing meetings ever since. The Pilgrims Network. Over the years, more and more influential persons joined the Pilgrim Society, including virtually all well-known bankers, robber barons and their associates. Going through membership lists of the Pilgrims of the United States, you will find the following families. So there's a hell of a list there. Yeah, Mellon, so they're part of the Grosvenors, that's Duke of Westminster's clan. That's who they are. So you've got Peabody there, that was Bank of England's intermediate with, was it Victoria? Reynolds, Rockefeller, Schiff, Stillman, Vanderbilt, Warburg, Watson, Whitney, Duke, Copeland, DuPont. So Copeland and DuPont, so then you've got Copeland out at police, the band, you've got all these kind of, so you're looking at intelligence, East India, Prussians, Dodge, Drexel, Dillon, Carnegie, Baker, Belmont, Aldrich, Astor, Pine, Reynolds, yeah. Watson, that's Walmart, isn't it? The Watsons. Within the ranks of the British Pilgrims, one comes across a great many barons, viscounts, earls, marquises, and dukes. Members of the British royal family have been patrons of the Pilgrim Society since its inception and regularly attend meetings. Here also well-known banking families as Baring, Hambro, Harcourt, Keswick, Rothschild, Kleinworth, Loeb, and Warburg can be found, just as the heads of the Barclays and the British managers of US banks, Chase Manhattan and J.P. Morgan. Now, Barclays was set up by the Quakers, and it was over their bank. They had a locust. So if you ever see a bank with a locust on, it was I can't remember the name of it, but it was actually Quakers that set it up. And it was a locust. I have actually better report about that. Barclays, just put Barclays into the website anytime and you'll get it. At the moment of this writing, the membership list compiled by PHEW. Right, so this does come from a dodgy bunch, but nevertheless, some of the researchers were fantastic. So when they wrote this, which was 2008, there were 1,496 names, and the vast majority, these are banks, the vast majority of them for the United States, rough estimate, about 82%. So that's 1,227 are from the US. Analyse the biographies of these members doesn't show that the Pilgrims are part of the WASP elite. They are the WASP elite. See, I still have an issue. I think the original WASPs are not this bunch of Johnny-come-latelys. But I could be wrong. The following banks, law firms, and insurance companies have been headed by Pilgrim Society members, usually for generations. You know all that. Well, Federal Reserve is made up of a few banks, isn't it? And the Bank of New York is the senior. And then that answers to the Bank of England. And it's still uncertain whether the Bank for International Settlements controls the Bank of England or vice versa. I've never been able to absolutely... I know they say what they say, but I'm not so sure. So that's a massive amount of business. This is 2008. Looking at these tables, it's clear that the major banks of New York and London have been very prominent in the Pilgrim Society, closely followed by a group of influential law firms and insurance companies. A number of corporations have also had considerable presence in the Pilgrims, comparable to some of the law firms and smaller banks. The most prominent of these might well be IBM, of the Watson family. So IBM is owned by the Watson family too. Wow. See, IBM is apparently running the Duchy of Lancaster on behalf of the Queen. And this iPad as the Grosvenors, so are the Watsons, another bunch of the Grosvenors, I wonder. But the founders and owners of Chrysler, Dodge, Jardine Matheson, W.R. Grace and Co., Reynolds, Corning Glass and Forbes have all been Pilgrims. Jardine Matheson, that were massive in Africa, weren't it? They were always up to no good. A vast range of other corporations have been represented by Pilgrims, but do not appear to have been part of the core of the Anglo-American establishment. Media and Operation Mockingbird. Except for Forbes, we deliberately left out our large media companies in this last section, as their presence in the Pilgrim Society and influence on society deserves to be discussed separately. The New York Times and the Time magazine have been the news publications the most intimately tied to the Pilgrims of the United States over the years. Since 1896, the New York Times has been owned by the Ox-Sulzberger family, members of which have been generational members of the Pilgrims since the beginning. Orville E. Dreyfus, who married a daughter of Arthur Sulzberger and rose to president of the New York Times in 1957 and publisher in 1961, was another member of the Pilgrims. A number of outside Pilgrims held senior positions in the New York Times, too, over the years. Among them were John William Harding, George McKenney, Philip Duval, Cyrus Vance, and Charles H. Price. Cyrus Vance. They're all just playing us. Just bloody acting it, all of it. Time magazine was set up by Henry Luce in 1923, although he himself appears not to have been a Pilgrim. Most of his associates were, including some of those who financed the founding of his magazine: J.P. Morgan Partners, Thomas W. Lamont, and Dwight Morrow, together with the Harriman and Harkness families, full stop. Among the Pilgrims that have held senior positions in Time magazine are Paul Gray Hoffman, and he was from the OSS, so you're looking at CIA, which is Jesuit, Philip G. Howlett, William J. Cross, Edley Donovan, Donald M. Elliman Jr., George A. Hurd, Roy E. Larson, Samuel W. Meek, and Frank Pace Jr. Henry Luce III became president of the U.S. Pilgrim Society in 1997. Ooh, I say. Now then. Another important Pilgrim-affiliated publication used to be the New York Herald Tribune, owned by the Reed family and dissolved in 1966. Whitelaw Reed II, Ogden Mills Reed, and Ogden Rogers Reed, and several other family members have all been members of the Pilgrim Society. In 1958, John Hay Whitney, a vice president of the US Pilgrims, took over the newspaper from the Reeds. Although not very prominent with the Pilgrim Society, some of the Reader's Digest most senior and long-term managers have been Pilgrims, spanning the period from the 1940s to the 1980s. Among them were William John Cross, Robert Devine, Walter Wood, Heitzman, and Kent Rhodes. News stations are considerably less prominent in Pilgrim Society. One of the exceptions has been the Radio Corporation of America, RCA. Written a full report on that. Massive company. And it's actually a London company pretending to be an American company. It's a good report, is that. I might put that up under here for you to have a look at, because it is very interesting. Yeah, Young was chairman, located in Rockefeller Center, one of the most dominant broadcasting companies from the 1930s to the early 1970s. Morgan's banker O.E.D. Young founded the RCA in 1919. Young was chairman of General Electric, which took a controlling interest in the RCA. And General Electric, of course, big financier of I.G. Farben. It was War Machine. For the next 50 years, until 1970, the company was headed by James G. Harbird, Frank M. Folsom, and David Sarnoff. All these men, including Young, were members of the Pilgrim Society. In 1970, Sarnoff's son Robert took over the chairmanship of RCA, but couldn't prevent the company from going into permanent decline. Robert was ousted in 1975, and in the years after the RCA was taken over by other media conglomerates not particularly tied to the Pilgrims. The RCA, in cooperation with General Electric and Westinghouse, had formed the NBC in 1926, which became its main broadcasting corporation. By the late 1930s, NBC had become so dominant to the airwaves that the FCC forced it into two companies, one becoming the significantly less influential ABC. At this moment, it appears that the succeeding heads of both NBC and ABC weren't invited to the Pilgrims. Of course, the Pilgrims of the RCA did continue to exert their influence over NBC for many years. One person not mentioned before is John Bradamas, one of the directors of the RCA NBC. Braidmas is a perfect example of a WASP elitist. A member of both the American and British Pilgrims, he was a Rhodes Scholar, a trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation, on the advisory board of the David Rockefeller Fellowship. Bill Clinton was saying, wasn't he? A director of the Aspen Institute, that's dodgy, a governor of the American Ditchley Foundation, and a member of the CFR, and a member of the Trilateral Commission, which we talked about when we discussed Zbigniew Brzezinski, the despiser of all things Russia. Braidmas also served on a number of Carnegie commissions. Well, Accrington Library is a Carnegie Library. It's, they've been ensuring we only see what they want us to see. The other exception of a broadcasting company that has been represented in the Pilgrim Society is CBS. Over the years, several Pilgrims have been directors of this New York-based company. Among them, Henry Kissinger and Marietta Peabody Tree. And she was vice chair of the Pilgrims and great-granddaughter of George E. Peabody, the famous Morgan partner or Morgan controller. William S. Paley, the founder and continuous owner of CBS until his death in 1990, was a member of the Pilgrim Society. So was the most trusted man in America, Walter Cronkite, the well-known anchorman for CBS Evening News from 1962 to 82. So again, we have to start looking at when did these guys leave and when did all this shit stuff that we get these days come in? Because it's looking to me like, they're going up to 80s and 90s, that some of these old guys might not actually have been bad geezers. But because if you've watched Charlotte Iserbyt's videos where she goes through her father's books, who were a member of the Skull and Bones, and she was going through all the members, you got the impression that before her father was dying, he didn't realise what role he was playing in the game as a member of the Skull and Bones. So they compartmentalise and don't necessarily know anything of what's actually being done through that. And then, of course, you've got to look at these Yale, and the money that they pull in is huge. It's ridiculous. It's mental. I think Yale's the second biggest. In the 1970s, a number of scandals in which the CIA was implicated. Several reports emerged about a working relationship between the CIA and a number of major media outlets. One of them was the 1979 book Catherine the Great by investigator author Deborah Davis. Oh, somebody did one. Who had been interviewed people in Washington for 3 years. She described the Washington Post's relationship with the CIA and how Watergate might not have been an accidental discovery. It even came to name the CIA's effort to establish contacts with the major media. Operation Mockingbird, unfortunately, virtually no one was able to read the book at the time, as it was immediately forced off the market, only to be republished in 1991. About Paley and Cronkite at CBS, Davis wrote, Paley's own friendship with Alan Dulles is now known to have been one of the most influential and significant in the communications industry. He provided cover for CIA agents, supplied outtakes of news films, permitted the debriefing of reporters, and in many ways set the standard for cooperation between the CIA and the major broadcasting companies, which lasted until the mid-70s. The Washington Postman continued to see Paley and Cronkite every Christmas at dinner, given by Alan Dulles at a private club called the Alibi. Membership is limited to men in or close to the intelligence and is by invitation only. Like Paley and Cronkite, Alan Dulles, head of the CIA from 1953-61, could be found at Pilgrim's gatherings in New York. The Alibi Club, on the other hand, was part of the Georgetown sect in Washington, D.C., an elite liberal social group with strong anti-communist feelings and close connections to the New York WASP establishment. So, members of the Georgetown set include many senior CIA advisors: Frank Wisner, Alan Dulles, James Angleton, Cord Meyer, Richard Bissell, and others. A few newspaper men like Washington Post, Philip Graham, and journalist Joseph Alsop, and apparently Walter Cronkite, were all part of this group. Now, this is interesting again because this is before the implementation of Vatican II, and Vatican II was the method by which Catholicism supported communism. Because up until that point, the Catholic Church didn't support communism. That was clearly the British Empire's role through MI6, Mossad, CIA, and these other intelligence operations. So this is all going down here before. So maybe these WASPs were still a little bit, well, they'd have to be, wouldn't they, what the Protestants of the day would expect as to be Protestant. But like I said, from the Schofield Bible onwards, so you're looking from the 1920s, and probably before that in America, the new Protestant was a different kind of Protestant and had been programmed at the Cecil Hotel in London to the Schofield Bible and the political movement that cannot be named. So we have to look at these timelines and try and verify when this shit system really took over. And you can see it's like everything seems to be ending, and I'll bet if we look further, they'd be moving into a corporation, wouldn't they? They'd be moving into the corporate realm as outside of all these. So a lot of these people could have been so compact. I mean, not Alan Dulles. That guy was just a serious player in all things New World Order. Davis and investigative reporters like Carl Bernstein have mentioned the names of important newspapermen who cooperated with the CIA. The CIA rated newspapermen among the best spies. They could go almost anywhere and ask questions without raising suspicions. At the same time, newspapermen could be used to disseminate anti-communist propaganda, something which the major media outlets were only too happy to support the CIA with. As Newsweek's foreign editor stated, the informal relationship was there. Why have anybody signed anything? What we knew, we told them, the CIA and the State Department. When I went to Washington, I would talk to Foster and Alan Dulles about what was going on. We thought it was admirable at the time. We were all in on the same side. All this makes a lot of sense, of course. The only problem here is that if the media people are so cozy with the CIA and State Department friends, who's going to keep these people in line? Apparently no one, hence the long list of conspiracies in American world history, which the major media outlets prefer not to investigate. Bernstein wrote, Among the executives who lent their cooperation to the agency were William Paley of the Columbia Broadcasting System, Henry Luce of Time Inc., Arthur Hayes Sulzberger of the New York Times, Barry Bingham, Sr. of the Louisville Courier-Journal, and James Copley of the Copley's News Service. Other organizations which cooperated with the CIA included the American Broadcasting Company, ABC, the National Broadcasting Company, NBC, and Associated Press, United Press International, Reuters, Hearst Newspapers, Scripps, Howard, Newsweek Magazine, the Mutual Broadcasting System, the Miami Herald, and the Old Saturday Evening Post, and the New York Herald Tribune. By far the most valuable of these associations going to CIA officials have been with the New York Times, CBS, and Time Inc. When Newsweek was purchased by the Washington Post Company, publisher Philip L. Graham was informed by agency officials that the CIA occasionally used the magazine for cover purposes, according to CIA sources. Bloody hell, I mean, this just goes on and on and on forever. So I think you get gist of like just what's going on with this. It's huge, and not everybody is aware of it. I know a lot of you guys probably are, but sometimes I've noted a lot of important topics are getting sort of left behind. People are no longer discussing them. Do you know what I mean? It's like these things need to be remembered. But you could see with that, just looking at that there, and it's like all these things are ending 80s, 90s, and then all of a sudden corporations are coming in, because 80s were the perfect time for them, weren't they? You just bought everything up. Loads of money. You're in Belfast. Belfast is in Southern African, is it? Right. What are you on about? You should have got some photos of that. That would have been interesting. Mind you, you'd have probably had spooks all over you. They took photos of gates. There's something going on with Irons Beans as well, isn't there? Is the ketchup not going to be being made here? It's a huge factory that they've got. Heinz 57. It's massive. St. Helens and Widnes area. But I think I saw an headline saying that they weren't going to do anything. They're moving it out. So she died, actually. Oh, it's certainly off. So we're up to 2 hours. We'll carry on a little bit more. So they were well into media, and then Mockingbird as well. Obviously, that's what they were running. Let's have a look. So they pretty much got them all. And British News. In 1977, Rolling Stone article, Bernstein mentioned once British-based news agency with an important New York department that has been significantly influenced by Pilgrims, and that's Reuters, which is Rothschild controlled now. So is Associated Press, AP, which is where everybody gets the news from. That's important. So every time you watch somebody on news, a reporter, they're all saying the same script coming out of AP or Reuters. Among the Pilgrims who have held senior positions in Reuters is Sir Christopher Chancellor, general manager from 1944 to 59, Lord William Barnston, chairman from 1968 to 79, and Sir Dennis Hamilton, chairman from 1979 to 85, and directors Lord Thompson of Fleet and Sir David Walker. Information on British pilgrims is still quite scarce compared to its American counterpart, so this list of senior executives will undoubtedly grow as more historical members become known. Among the British news outlets that have been influenced by pilgrims are the Observer, Financial Times, Economist, and especially the Times and the Commonwealth Press Union. The press baron Lord Beaverbrook, who owned the widely circulated Daily Express, is known to have visited the pilgrims at least once. Now then, that's interesting, because Daily Express is a seriously, I'd say, Knights of Malta operation. I actually worked on the Manchester building when we refurbed it and put all new printing press in. Now that is so an era at the Pilgrims, so there we go. But it's not very likely to have been a member of the Pilgrims, as he was not particularly interested in Anglo-American partnership. Pilgrims have also edited the world-famous Encyclopedia Britannica. Examples are Senator William Benton, Philip M. Kaiser, and Elmore Roper. Well, you do not want to be looking at Encyclopedia Britannica past the 7th edition. That's when the Rothschilds bought it. So if you want to see, and I'll tell you now, you can tell why they bought it. You read the old Britannica and they tell you as it is, and they don't mince the words. They're not frightened to say it as it is, who it is, and what it is. And that's why they took it over. So, and this is a long time ago. So that you forget anything post 7th edition. And I've actually got the 7th edition somewhere in my computer. Well worth it. In fact, I might put it on the website actually, because that's worth being available for people to actually. So when you're looking, so how I've used it is if I'm looking at a particular time, an historical event, I'll go to that. And then you go to that and you go to the modern day one, and oh my God, can you see who runs that? It's there, because everybody on their side's admitted, and everybody that's not is back. Oh, no. They've really, through buying that Encyclopedia Britannica, have enforced the Schofield Bible in the minds of the English. Excuse me. Out of my eye. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. He said Britain appears to have had some sort of Mockingbird program similar to the United States. In 1994, Private Eye magazine reported how in 1976, John Snow, a well-known newscaster, had been approached by a representative of British intelligence. Snow was asked if he would provide a security service with information on political activities of his colleagues. His salary of £3,600 sterling would be matched, and there wouldn't be any problems with Inland Revenue. Snow refused, but see, there you go. I mean, Intel, who can decide, British intelligence are running Inland Revenue. You know what I'm saying? So you get attacked by Inland Revenue, you've pissed. You're an enemy of that bunch. And take a bit of pride in that. Snow refused, but Private Eye suspected that most large newspapers and media stations employed persons who had been more susceptible to this kind of approach. The magazine also wondered aloud if recent story about the Guardian's owner Richard Gott falsely tying him to the KGB had been written by journalists on the payroll of British intelligence. At the time, Gott's newspaper was digging into the affairs of Jonathan Aitken, a person with numerous ties to hard-right national and international intelligence people. Additionally, in 1995, a person named Gerald James published his rather controversial book In the Public Interest. James had been a banker at Burings Brothers, a Pilgrim's Bank, and a member of the aristocratic Monday Club. He knew many people in intelligence, including the former deputy head of MI6, George Kennedy, young, isn't it to do with me, who became a banker at Kleinwort. James was also chairman of the arms company Astor Holdings. In his biography, Expose, James wrote how a cabal of city bankers and intelligence men were running the major illegal arms deals, had infiltrated and corrupted smaller companies and collapsed a number of them after fearing exposure in the wake of the Iraq Gate scandal. Oh, so I think that was the giant gun I've got a report on that. Sir Peter Blaker. No, wait a minute. Sir Peter Blaker runs North Division. Nuclear, I think it's to do with missing nuclear weapons. And it's like British intelligence intrigue between Israel, South Africa, America, and UK. And in that, you get to see that far from being the shining knight in armour for the Africans, Nelson Mandela, if he was ever in prison, outside the photographs, was brought to Melrose House in London, I think it was either 83 or 87, where it was agreed that he would carry out this agenda in South Africa and become the leader. So that was the agreement he made. And the first thing he did when he became president of South Africa was borrow $5 billion to buy weapons. So not such a great egg, our African geezer. So James describes his experience with the British media. He says, I have been involved with a number of journalists in researching this story. This is the arms to Iraq. At any one time, there might be as many as half a dozen following up this or that line of inquiry, and we keep constantly in touch by telephone. It is to our mutual benefit, except that the relationship, which has now been going on for nearly 5 years, has frequently been marked by sudden changes of policy by newspaper editors or the unexplained removal of a journalist from the case or even from the paper, sometimes to a more exalted position on another, where the arms to Iraq inquiry is not part of the brief. It never really surprised me until I was amazed to receive from one of my other sources a list of journalists with affiliations to MI5, on which were posted some of my own contacts in the press. Indeed, some who had, at the beginning, made something of a name for themselves on the back of the arms to Iraq affair. So these, they're into everything. This is why the media now can pump out this absolute bollocks, because it all now is totally controlled by the intelligence spooks, who have nothing to do with anybody's nation. They work for Committee 300. British pilgrims can hardly be tied to the British Mockingbird programme, probably because there's too little information available on the collusion between British intelligence and the press. The exception might be of a more reactionary aristocrats in the British pilgrims like Sir Frederick Bennett, Lord Chalfont, Lord William Rees-Mogg, we still have one of them, and their ally in the United States, John Train, though a discussion of these people will have to wait a few paragraphs. So then it goes into education. So I'll leave that side of things here. But what we will do, because I've forgot, I'm just going to look at Mockingbird, because I forgot what it is, but I know it's important. Mockingbird program. Oh, somebody's nicked it. Children here. Oh, so they've nicked the term here and put it onto something to do with children. Mockingbird program intelligence. See what we get now. There we go. Operation Mockingbird. It says Operation Mockingbird is an alleged large-scale program of the United States intelligence agency that began in the early years of the Cold War and attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. According to author Deborah Davis, Operation Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into a propaganda network and influenced the operations of front groups. CIA support of front groups was exposed when in April 1967, Ramparts magazine article reported that the National Student Association was receiving funding from the CIA. In 1975, Church Committee Congressional Investigations revealed agency connections with journalists and civic groups. In 1973, a document referred to as the Family Jewels was published by the CIA containing a reference to Project Mockingbird, which was the name of an operation in 1963 wiretapping two journalists believed to be disseminating classified information. The document does not, however, contain reference to Operation Mockingbird. Let's just have a look on the talk page of the wiki. You usually get some good shit on there. It's everything they don't want you to see. So Alan Dulles, he promoted Mockingbird, so we've come across him in that Pilgrims. yeah, Truman. So you've got all these talking heads that you'd expect. So there we've seen with that what he's just explained in relation to the getting into journalism. That's where Project Mockingbird came of that, and they just basically have been blagging and blagging and blagging and telling lies and fantasy scripts and all sorts since the 60s. So there we go. So well, it looks like you've had all plenty going on with Chin Wagging. So I think we've done over 2 hours and 9. We'll call that a day. I will say thank you very much for joining and for taking part. Till the next time.